afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another installment of iTOO TV. We are coming to you live from DroneCon at Emperor's Palace, and I am sitting here with Heico Kühn, who is COO at Bidvest UDS. Welcome, Kühn.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for making time to come and chat to us.
Sure.
Heico, I believe you've got extensive experience in drones and drones of security. But before we delve into the actual subject of security drones, can you give us a little bit of history of where the drones and security in drones started from?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think, well, firstly, I think it's a brilliant conference that's been put together. And I think tomorrow I'm speaking specifically about that question about where do drones come from. I think specifically in the security industry. I think a lot of people don't know that drones have been used since the 1800s already. You know, when the Australians had gone into Venice and used various kinds of balloons to fly bombs into Venice and so on. And then, you know, going on to what we've always seen with various types of technology, whether it be drones or internet or Wi-Fi or whatever, we need wars. Yes. Because wars always boost technology. So World War I, they were already starting to use spy planes. They were already starting to use training planes and drones, unmanned aircraft. That obviously got exacerbated again in the Second World War. And then in the 1900s, well, the late 1900s, at least in the 90s, many militaries across the world were already using drones from military perspectives. Even here in South Africa has got quite a rich history in using drones and weaponized drones. Okay. So later on, you know, into the late 1980s, drones started to get weaponized. And Denel in South Africa were actually one of the leaders in the world in manufacturing these drones. Okay. It wasn't until about sort of 2006, 2007 where they started to get a little bit more in the private space. And then as we know, in 2015, South Africa were one of the first guys to promulgate regulations for commercial flight. And that's really where commercial flight took off in this security space as well. So I think a lot of people focus on drones, and since they became commercial in the survey and mapping and inspection side of things, which is certainly the case, but we forget that the largest bulk of drones in this country are being used specifically for security and surveillance. So they've grown exponentially. I'm
one of those people. I thought drones have always just like been a thing that came out in the 2016s or 2017, so they've dated back to way back then.
Yeah, look, it's a concept that's been around for 150 years, and it's always been kept quite tight by the military. But certainly for the last 50 years, it's been quite mainstream, but not quite commercial as yet. Okay. And surveillance, like I say, the security side of drones is a massive aspect in South Africa, particularly. We find that security operations with drones are quite clandestine, and that's why you won't hear about them as much as you do as survey mapping and inspection drones.
So can you give us a few examples of where drones are being used in a security environment?
Yeah, look, absolutely. The drones are... The bulk of where drones are currently being used is two places. Firstly, in terms of mining. So as we know that mines really struggle with a lot of illegal mining activity, and mines are generally equipped with a lot of equipment that carries a lot of copper, carries a lot of steel, there's a lot of diesel. So there's often a lot of theft that happens on mines that cost them quite a lot of money. So most mines in the country have already implemented some sort of drone program to conduct perimeter surveillance, but then also to use the drones as a reaction to the ground forces. So as we know, a drone can't arrest a person or apprehend a person, but it can certainly spot the suspects a lot sooner and then guide the tactical forces on the ground towards the criminal element. So that's in the mining space. And then the other space where it's big is, we all know that Transnet struggles quite a lot with copper theft, overhead cable, signal cable, and so forth. And because it's such a vast area throughout the whole country, it's very difficult to patrol, and it's very expensive to patrol with private security only with vehicles. And that's where drones have proved to be exceptionally valuable, to have an eye in the sky. And obviously their job is not only to detect, but in the first place to deter as well.
Yes, absolutely. And do you have any examples for us where drones have been used successfully in apprehending suspects or apprehending criminals?
Yeah, so look, we apprehend and arrest suspects probably on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So there are many examples. Again, you know, as opposed to the sort of activity and the sort of examples that we get from survey and mapping, that's quite easy to speak about.
Yeah.
It's not very easy to speak about these kind of things in terms of the amount of arrests are made and where they are made. Because it's quite confidential information. And quite a lot of the time, these type of arrests that are getting made are people that are essentially committing treason. Because if you damage critical infrastructure or a national key point, you're going to jail for a long time. So it's often very difficult for us to boast or to market our successes, because a lot of these things are still sitting in court cases and so on. But we are involved in multiple arrests every week. So there's quite a lot of them.
And I'm also thinking, just from our insurance point of view, because we also insure things like kidnap and ransom, which we don't advertise or speak openly about. But have you seen instances where drones have been used in recovering or assisting in the recovery of maybe a person that's been kidnapped?
It certainly has been a case. So often, because we work so closely with the South African police services on a number of our operations, the SAPs will often ask us to assist with cases exactly like that. One case that I can talk about, which is actually it's a very good story and a success story, is probably about 4 weeks ago, a little girl went missing on a farm. She was 3 years old, and the farmers that are adjacent to the railway track often give us information, and we give them information if there's criminal activity around. So we work quite closely with the communities around there. So it was one of the farm workers' daughter that disappeared. She just thought her mom was busy hanging up washing, and unfortunately she wandered off. This was at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock they had still not found her. As we know, it's starting to get very cold. And it was at this point that they called us in, and they said, listen, please can you come and assist? It's vast areas. It's mostly maize fields, which means if she's lying in the middle of the maize fields, if the cars are driving up and down the farm roads, they won't see her. We eventually deployed a drone with thermal technology because it had started getting dark. And we've been called to a few of these sort of operations, and usually, you know, it ends in bad news, and you're usually looking for a body, and you're not looking for somebody alive. The guys were about to give up, because at this point it was already 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, and the 3-year-old had been missing since 9 o'clock in the morning. But eventually we did find her, and we spotted her, and she was sleeping in the middle of the maize field, and we managed to save her. We saved her just in time as well, because what we could also see on the thermal cameras from the drone is that there were jackals circling around where she was lying.
Oh my gosh, that's quite scary.
I mean, it was published on News 24, and it was in front of a front page of a few newspapers, just to have a good news story for once.
No, that's amazing. It really is. It is amazing. And you mentioned that you work with SAPs. So are they equipped to work together with you guys with the drone technology, or do you guys keep your drone technology especially for your side? And how does the two integrate? So between their systems and you coming with the drones? So
there's various systems. So often we would invite the SAPs on special operations when we are working with the private industry, so the private sector or large mining houses. And when we know that we've collected intelligence across the site, and we know that there's going to be arrests that need to occur, then we will call the SAPs in, or vice versa. If they've found another special operation and they need our assistance, we'll certainly go assist. So what's very important is that we stick to who's the experts in what. The police are incredibly good at intelligence gathering. The police are incredibly good at actually forming ambushes and actually going out and taking out the criminal element. And we need to stick what we do best, which is to be their eyes in the sky. And to give them the right information, knowing what information to give them.
Absolutely.
So how we communicate with each other is very important. We need to understand that they can't see what we see, and similarly, we also need to understand that what they see is not necessarily what we see. So the communication and the language you use while you are busy interacting with each other and directing them towards the criminal element is very important.
I'm just having a thought now, just from I know in the cyber environment, we've got black hats and white hats, the good guys and the bad guys. Just in terms of the drone industry, have you ever seen that some people are using drones illegally or in ways that they shouldn't be using? And what's your involvement when it comes to curbing that type of thing?
Yeah, look, it certainly happens. And that's one thing that we must understand when we start. We're not talking about petty theft that we're protecting against. We're talking about a very sophisticated criminal element that's out there. These guys are coming there with massive weapons. They're coming there with drones. They're coming there with technology. They do their own intelligence gathering as well. So it's really a war out there. So, you know, that's where we start talking about, and we've got some colleagues at the conference here as well, that talk about counter-drone technology and how you can enable to ground a drone that is not registered, for example, is not supposed to be able to fly in the airspace. So that's another service that we're also able to offer, is to say to the client, all right, this is the perimeter of your site. We'll make sure that no drones except ours are allowed to operate within there, because they certainly do use them. It's a very sophisticated criminal that we're dealing with. And we always need to understand that if we've got technology, if we've got access to technology, so do they.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why you always need to stay one step ahead in terms of the technology you use. And make sure that the technology you use, you keep quite confidential.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the most important thing that you get from the drone, because I think what was spoken about today was that the drone is a tool, but what actually is valuable is the information or the data that it's collecting. How do you, as a drone owner or drone service provider, ensure that the information that's been collected is safeguarded from such criminals? Yeah,
look, it's incredibly important, and you touch on a very good point. The information that we usually gather, even if we live stream it, we stream it to a operations center, to a particular client, or to our own operations center, or we do not stream the data at all, depending on the sensitivity of the contract, because a lot of the footage that is usually used in an apprehension will be evidence in court. It is incredibly important that we safeguard this information, and we have to keep it for up to 5 years. So with these structures that we have from an IT environment, we've got many three-way redundant failover firewalls and et cetera, all the security is in place. You know, the various kinds of authentications to make sure that there's no access to this data.
Okay, fantastic. And how do you envision the future of drones and security in South Africa and Africa?
Well, look, I think certainly the hot topic at the moment is autonomous and to operate them autonomously. I think the autonomy that we require is not there for two reasons yet. First reason being the South African regulations that are sort of curbing their technology that it can be. We've seen a bunch of solutions here today that advertising the drone in the box and so on. There's certainly a lot of scope for that. But there's certain types of autonomy. You know, our CIA doesn't really like the term autonomy. They would always like a pilot to be in control of the flight. So that's the first thing. I think in the future things will get a lot more autonomous. The second thing is intuition. And I think that's where we are very lucky in that we've got incredibly skilled pilots. You need to have intuition when you're working in security. When you are doing a survey mission or you're doing stockpiles, for example, on a mine, you can have an autonomous mission because this is now sort of a repetitive job that you're going to do every single day. In the security space, you need to know how to interact with your ground teams. You need to know how to take over the drone because these kind of operations are incredibly dynamic. No criminal activity, no one or two criminal activities are the same. They all use different kind of methods, and that's when you need trained pilots specific in the surveillance industry. And that's where I think we are very lucky with our pilots, that they are able to think on their feet, and that they are able to make the right decisions at crucial times. And often, you know, the pilot is the redundancy for the drone's fail-safe at the end of the day. A criminal might make a move that you are not prepared for, but if you've got a pilot that's awake, then you can adapt to those circumstances.
Gosh, it sounds like a very high-pressured environment.
Look, it is. I think it is a high-pressure environment, but we must understand that what we are there trying to do is we're trying to protect our clients.
Yeah.
And in certain aspects as well, we're trying to protect our country.
Yes.
We're trying to protect the economy of our country.
Yeah.
And I've always said that to say that, we don't have any competitors in this industry.
Yeah.
Yes, we're big and so on, but we don't have competitors. We've got colleagues.
Yeah.
Because no matter who's involved in the service, we're all fighting the same fight for the greater good. And there's more than enough crime to go around in South Africa for us all to get a piece of the pie. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Heico, maybe just in closing, what sort of technology do you guys deploy to ensure public safety? So if there's a riot, for example, do you guys get involved in any of that sort of activity, which is not necessarily criminal, but it is disturbing?
Yeah, so we get called out to that quite a lot, to those kind of activities. It's something that we will provide to our mining clients as well. So they would say, all right, we've got a protest coming up, or we anticipate that there's going to be resignations or retrenchments, we would then employ additional drone teams. But then we would start using a bit smarter technology. So we would live stream data straight to their operational center so that the senior guys can say, okay, well, we think we need to move in another bus there, or we think we need to get some more support at the back. In addition to that, we're also able to employ facial recognition now on drones. Okay. So this used to be something that was sort of only unique to static cameras, and they would use them in banks and they would use them in shopping malls. But now the technology is available to be used on drones, which means that what the mine can essentially do is all their access control information that they've already got from the employees, so all their photos, they load that into the database. Yes. Whilst the facial recognition system is running, we would be able to pick up who's an employee and who's not an employee, who's a troublemaker. Yes. We've often found with protests and where there's vandalism and where there's violence, it's often not the employees of the mine, it's people from the community that have come in to try and rile up the situation. And this is now where you can exonerate these guys and say, look, it wasn't my people. And you don't have to charge any people or whatever it may be. So that's one of the new technologies that has come out in order to curb protests, riots, etc.
Sure. That's quite powerful. It's amazing what drones can actually achieve.
Yes.
Okay. Heico, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for spending time with us this afternoon. And thank you for being one of the presenters or speakers. All the best for tomorrow. And thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cool. And thank you to everybody that's joining us and watched this episode of iTOO TV, where we were coming live from DroneCon at Emperor's Palace. My name is Tove Sitole, Brand and Talent Manager at iTOO Special Risk. iTOO, your epic partner in specialty insurance.